A restless silence sits beneath the surface when potential remains untouched. The body goes through the motions, yet the soul whispers that something is being wasted. That quiet ache is not depression, it is misalignment. The subconscious sees through excuses, through half-effort, through distractions disguised as peace. It knows what could be done. It knows how far the line of discipline could stretch. Every delay registers as betrayal. The conscience becomes a battlefield between what is being done and what could be done. The pain that lingers after procrastination is not punishment from the world. It's feedback from within, the reminder that the standard has been violated. The subconscious has no patience for mediocrity. It measures truth not by words but by effort. It remembers every promise ever made and every time that promise was abandoned. It keeps score long after the conscious mind forgets. That's why the guilt does not fade even when pleasure distracts. The deeper self does not celebrate avoidance. It demands execution. The ache that sits in the chest after comfort is not regret from failure. It's awareness of avoidance. The inner self watches the outer drift away from purpose and mourns the distance. That internal discomfort is not a curse. It's a compass pointing toward potential ignored. The conscious mind, however, is built for survival, not greatness. It fears the unknown, fears failure, fears judgment. While the subconscious pushes forward, the conscious pulls back, whispering warnings of pain and risk. That conflict creates tension, the sense of being torn in two directions. Comfort becomes a shield, and ambition becomes a threat. The conscious tries to rationalize stagnation with logic, but logic cannot silence truth. Deep down, the mind knows when it is playing small. The guilt that arises is not weakness, it is intelligence. It's the awareness that safety and satisfaction can never coexist. When potential is suppressed, the mind turns against itself. Thoughts become sharp, restless, and intrusive. Sleep no longer restores. Distraction no longer numbs. Every moment of wasted effort compounds into internal noise. The subconscious speaks louder, demanding action. But the conscious deflects, afraid of the work required. The result is self-loathing disguised as fatigue. The inner world becomes heavy with unfulfilled promise. That pressure will not disappear until movement begins. The mind was never meant to carry dreams unacted upon. It was meant to release them through execution. Action is the only therapy that silences inner conflict. For some, the discomfort runs deeper than guilt. It becomes existential dread. Watching others ascend becomes unbearable because it reflects what could be achieved if focus were applied. Envy hides within admiration. The subconscious sees itself in the success of others and screams to match it. But the conscious fears exposure. It whispers, stay hidden, stay safe. That inner tug of war is the birthplace of bitterness. The pain does not come from what others have, but from knowing that the same power lies dormant, waiting for permission to move. Environments amplify this battle. Around those who aim lower, comfort feels justified. Around those who aim higher, the subconscious awakens. Their ambition acts as a mirror. The energy of discipline radiates silently, and it confronts every excuse without a word spoken. That confrontation feels like judgment, but it's reflection. The conscious feels threatened because potential recognizes its rival. The fear is not of the other's success, it's of one's own capability exposed. The discomfort is proof that the higher self is stirring beneath the surface, demanding acknowledgement. The mind that fears potential has learned to associate power with pain. Perhaps it once tried and failed. Perhaps it was mocked for standing out. The conscious builds armor from those memories and labels it humility. But humility without progress is cowardice in disguise. The subconscious, untouched by fear, still carries memory of strength. It remembers every moment of confidence, every glimpse of greatness, and it keeps replaying them like unfinished business. That replay becomes pressure. It forces confrontation between who one is and who one could be. The longer that confrontation is avoided, the heavier the weight becomes. Every transformation begins with surrender to discomfort. The guilt is not punishment, it is invitation. It is the subconscious saying, there is more. Once action begins, the conflict dissolves. The conscious stops fearing potential and starts collaborating with it. The fear of failure fades, replaced by fascination with improvement. The energy once spent resisting is redirected toward creation. Movement becomes momentum, and momentum becomes identity. The once divided mind becomes unified around purpose. The pain vanishes not because life simplifies, but because alignment restores peace. Those who live in truth do not seek comfort from chaos, they find rhythm inside it. The internal struggle never disappears, but mastery turns it into fuel. The subconscious and conscious no longer fight for control, they merge into one force. What was once guilt transforms into gratitude. The awareness that once caused pain becomes the foundation for consistency. Every day becomes a chance to close the distance between capacity and performance. Progress turns guilt into power. Potential no longer feels like burden, it feels like birthright. You move differently because your world was built differently. What they call confusion is your construction site. What they see as chaos is the forge where you're shaping something no one else has the courage to attempt. They look at your path and assume you're lost because they can't trace the pattern. But that's because they only understand order that fits inside a box. You live in motion. You build through friction. You were never meant to follow a straight line. You learned early that creation doesn't look pretty in progress. It looks like uncertainty, long nights, and unanswered questions. They mock your pace because they've never carried a vision heavy enough to test their sanity. When they watch you, they see inconsistency. But what they don't realize is that you're evolving faster than their eyes can process. You're burning through versions of yourself, while they recycle the same habits every year. You've stepped into a cycle of creation and destruction, one necessary for reinvention. The noise, the unpredictability, the sleepless drive, it's all the sound of transformation. They mistake your solitude for confusion because they've never experienced what it feels like to rebuild from the ashes. The chaos that terrifies them feels like home to you because it's the only space where growth can breathe. You're not unstable. You're refining alignment through disorder. They were raised to chase stability, not depth. Their definition of success is safety disguised as progress. You were never attracted to that. You understood that real peace is earned, not given. You knew that purpose demands sacrifice, that evolution comes with disarray. The reason they don't understand your world is because they've never questioned their own. They live inside systems that promise certainty while slowly suffocating originality. You broke that illusion. You walked away from comfort and chose chaos on purpose. Because chaos is not punishment, it's permission. The universe doesn't hand growth to those who demand calm. It hands it to those who can walk through storms without losing direction. There are nights when your own mind turns against you, when your vision feels like madness. That's the price of seeing what others don't. You carry thoughts too complex to explain, emotions too vast to articulate, so you stop explaining altogether. You let your silence do the speaking while your work unfolds. You stop seeking validation because you realize no one else can translate the language of your chaos. It is sacred, and like all sacred things, it must be protected. The world misunderstands because it was never meant to comprehend. You are not here to be understood. You are here to be undeniable. Most people crave clarity before they move. You learn that movement creates clarity. The first step always feels wrong because it happens inside the fog. But as you walk, the mist clears. That's how you've built everything. Blind, uncertain, yet driven by a force deeper than logic. The chaos they fear is the process you trust. It's the dance between doubt and decision. You no longer flinch when things fall apart, because you've learned that falling apart is just a stage in falling together. Progress is never quiet. It roars, breaks, and rebuilds until precision emerges. When they say you've changed, what they mean is you stopped performing stability for their comfort. You stopped hiding the parts of you that were raw, restless, and real. They can't handle your intensity because they've lived their whole lives diluted. You've seen too much to return to pretending. That's why you look detached. You've detached from mediocrity. You've stopped conforming to conversations that feed nothing but ego. You've learned that solitude sharpens more than society does. They won't understand that until their own walls start to collapse, and they'll remember the one who warned them that chaos is not the end. It's the entrance. There's power in your turbulence. The same energy that destroys also creates. Fire doesn't ask permission to burn. It simply does. You've become that fire. You don't apologize for being intense, for wanting more, for breaking things that no longer align. You no longer crave applause. You crave evolution. That's why you don't panic when the ground shakes. You've learned to build on unstable terrain. Every time the world falls apart around you, you find a new rhythm. That's not madness. That's mastery. The ones who thrive are never the ones who avoid storms. They're the ones who learn to dance in them. Every creator goes through seasons of isolation. It's not punishment. It's preparation. The chaos you face is sculpting you into someone precise enough to handle the weight of what's coming. You can't explain that to those who've never been alone with their thoughts long enough to confront themselves. They confuse your discipline for obsession because they've never felt the pull of destiny. But every great transformation begins as chaos misunderstood by the masses. When you are ahead of your time, you will always look irrational to those who never left theirs. You are not broken for feeling disoriented. You are in the process of recalibration. What feels like disorder is your soul rearranging itself to match your next chapter. Every failure, every collapse, every disappointment, it's all part of the pattern that will make sense later. The reason others can't relate is because they haven't seen the entire picture yet. They live in snapshots while you see the full painting. They don't need to understand the brushstrokes. They only need to witness the masterpiece when it's done. Until then, protect your process.